Hi, my name is Cheri, and most of you probably know me, but in case you don't, I've been growing my locks for over 12 years now. I want to share my top 5 secrets for growing longer locks faster. Before we get into the secrets, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. And also, after this video, if you haven't already seen it, go and watch my lock questions and answers video that I've linked in the description. My number 5 tip for growing long locks faster is to make sure that you're well nourished and avoid vitamin deficiencies. So I typically take a multivitamin each day, just a regular old multivitamin, and I try to eat reasonably well. You know, I've been working on trying to improve my diet some, but bottom line is that if you are doing things like, you know, extreme dieting and stuff like that, or you have vitamin deficiencies, then your hair is not going to be as strong and grow as long as you'd want it to and be as healthy ultimately. I have heard of people taking supplements specifically for hair, things like biotin and other stuff. I don't really think any of that's necessary. And I've heard people taking hair vitamins for years and years and years. So unless you have some particular situation that's going on with you medically and you feel the need, I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm just saying I haven't felt the need to do that in, you know, between 12 and 13 years that I've been growing my locks, and I don't think I've had any issues. My number 4 tip for growing your locks longer and stronger is to keep heat out of your hair. It's just that simple. So what that means is if you're getting your hair retwisted or if you're styling it, if you can, go ahead and just cover your hair with a scarf to maybe lay it flat so that and let it air dry. After you wash your hair, go ahead and let it air dry instead of putting blow dryers or bonnet dryers or sitting under the dryer. That's because just over time, the heat damage is something that you'd like to avoid. I shouldn't have to say this, but please do not use curling irons on your locks. I've actually seen a few people who have done that. And I've seen some other people who have like a lock tool, which, you know, so that to keep your lock from being fuzzy, they'll go ahead and put the tool on and it's like an iron and it heats it and it presses the lock together. Just avoid any heat on your hair, especially extreme heat that will come from like curling irons and stuff like that. Because the thing you have to keep in mind is when you have your hair for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, because maybe you've grown it shoulder length or something, not locked, and you press it or do other heat things, you're clipping your ends regularly and stuff like that. But when you have long locks and you're trying to keep them long, you're trying to keep your hair for longer and you want to keep it healthy for longer. And the other part is that most of the hair that's down here is not going to be connected at the root anymore. So it's, in a sense, it might be dead if you want to think of it that way, which means you have to really keep it hydrated and make sure that you're not doing anything that's going to further damage the hair. It doesn't mean that you're going to have problems necessarily if you do use the heat, but I choose to avoid the heat and I think it served me quite well. My number 3 secret for growing long locks is to make sure that you keep your hair hydrated, but not overhydrated. So what I mean by that is make sure that your hair is not feeling brittle and dry. When my hair is feeling dry, if I haven't washed it in a while, I'll make sure that I do a co-wash or a conditioner wash and let that conditioner really get in there and seep in. There are different oils that you can use, a variety of different ones. But bottom line is just make sure that your hair is not just brittle and dry. And then the other thing is, I sometimes will just use a plain old oil sheen on my hair, like the oil sheen spray, on my locks, like for this part, especially the part that's been color treated, because that has more of a tendency to become dry. So I'll just literally spray that on if it's feeling a little bit dry in between. Some people use things like rose oil and different other essential oils on their hair. I personally don't get into that too much, but, to each his own. These are just my tips and secrets that I found work well for me. Also, on the line of keeping your hair hydrated, you want to be sure to rinse out any product. So like today, I did a really, really quick no retwist style. And I used actually just some a light gel that's a softer gel like jam. And I use that on just around the edges to get it to lay down, and I put a scarf on it to make it slightly flat. You can see it's not that super slick bulletproof look, but it's just something to keep the flyaways from being too bad in the hair. But when I'm done with this, later on, I'm going to make sure that I rinse out all of that product. That's part of keeping it hydrated, because if you have products that have maybe alcohols in them and other things in them that are drying out your hair, and then that's contributing to the buildup and the dryness in the hair over time, that's another thing that can cause breakage over time and just give you a lot of trouble. Because when you're trying to, you know, pick out and over manipulate the hair to get all the grit and stuff out of it that you've let dry in there, you just have to make sure that you rinse all of that stuff out if you're putting gels or any other products on the roots of your hair to kind of tame them. The other reason that I say don't overhydrate your hair is because you want to avoid mold and mildew. And I know that sounds pretty gross, but what can happen over time is if you're washing your hair very frequently and you're letting it air dry and it's not drying completely, you're possibly going to be able to have mold or mildew grow in your hair. And everybody knows the smell of like a bathroomy kind of mildewy smell. And so here's something that happened to me a few years ago. I had noticed that I had been washing my hair and then I smelled like and I was letting it air dry and it had gotten longer. And I was like, why does it smell like not fresh and clean as I wash my hair? And so then I started to wash it even more frequently because I would notice that when it was wet, I smelled it. I didn't smell it when it was dry. And so I was like, what's going on here? And so finally, I, realized that my hair wasn't thoroughly drying. And, when you have really, really long hair like this, it takes my hair a couple days to fully dry. And so I have to make sure that I'm allowing it to dry. I'm not putting it in styles. I'm not sitting it under, a bonnet because it's really not going to dry and it's going to remain damp for longer. So that's one of the things you have to consider if you're not going to put heat into your hair, if you're not sitting under dryers after you wash your hair or style it. Oh, and so I might as well say, so I did smell that mildewy smell. And so how did I get rid of it? What I had to wind up doing was basically an apple cider vinegar rinse. And I had to do it a bunch of times. Like I put my hair, let it soak, got everything out, rinsed everything out, let it soak again. And I did probably 3 or 4, maybe four soaks over the course of probably 2.5 to 3 hours, just rinsing it and then I didn't have any problem after that. And I learned my lesson about letting my hair remain too damp after I washed it or styled it. My number 2 secret for growing long locks is, and you might be surprised if you're looking at my hair, think twice about coloring your hair with anything that has, bleach in it. So in this case, you see the lighter color here. I earlier on bleached my hair, and that bleach over time, my hair has been bleached about 2.5 times, maybe is what I'd call it, because all of it was bleached twice. But at the time when it was this length, but then certain parts of it were bleached even a 3rd time. I say that because it makes your hair really, really sensitive, and it increases the chances that you're going to have breakage over time. So let me show you what I mean. Here is part of a lock, and this is a very, very weakened part of that lock that has been color treated. And ultimately, I know it's getting to the point where either I'm going to have to repair this area or I'm going to have to lose that length there. I'm not sure what'll wind up happening with it, but I'll decide. Thank goodness I don't have that on all of my locks, but that's maybe a more severe area. But there's a consequence to coloring your hair. You'll enjoy it. It looks great. It's awesome. It's wonderful. But unless you intend to cut your hair or maintain your locks at a much shorter length, it can and probably will impede your hair growth. And that's just my honest opinion. I don't have any intention of ever coloring my locks again with a permanent like bleach based hair color. Now, what I say you can do is you can put, the semi-permanent colors like rinses in, because those don't damage your hair the same way. I've heard of people liking the deposit color with things like henna. I've never personally used henna myself simply because it just sounded complicated. But the reason I don't like rinses is because, as you know, they constantly rinse out. So then it's messing up your pillowcase. And every time you wash your hair, it's just a mess everywhere. And when you have really long hair, it's an even bigger mess. And I just don't want to deal with this. So, this is the color my hair grows out of my head, which is probably like a 1B color, if you guys know. And that's just the color it's going to be from here on out, or at least the foreseeable future until I start getting gray. But think twice about coloring your hair. That's another secret of mine. My number one secret for growing long locks faster is to not over manipulate your hair. You all will hear me say that in every single video. And the price to not over manipulating your hair means that, you'll notice that I don't have, my baby hairs are not all laid down flat. I'm not using a bunch of edge control. You don't see like highly defined parts. And this is not to be critical of people who have parts that are highly defined, but have you ever noticed the people who have highly defined parts that are pulling their hair a lot, their hairline starts to move back and those parts get wider and wider and wider over time. And part of this reason is because they're pulling it too hard. And the longer your hair gets, the more stress is on the roots of your hair, and it makes it more prone to breakage at the roots. And the over manipulation can make it prone to breakage in other areas too. So that is my advice. And I'm going to go over some ways and things I'm talking about over manipulation of the hair. So even though this is the number one has like 1B, 1C, and we're going to talk about each one of those things. Number one, do not retwist your hair super often. And by super often, I mean some people retwisting your hair every week, that's too much. Retwisting your hair even every 2 weeks, in my opinion, is too much. I would not retwist my hair more than once a month. Personally, I don't even retwist my hair once a month. You guys know, if you've seen some of my other videos, I do what I call cheat styles, where I may retwist certain locks that are in the front and invisible areas that I need to make my style look maintained, and that's it. So the parts on the inside are not constantly retwisted. Also, when you are retwisting your hair, be aware, it's a temptation with both braids and locks, is you want to retwist kind of tight because you want it to last. But understand that if you retwist tightly, then you're, possibly pulling that hair too tight. You're creating traction on your roots that could cause permanent hair damage and loss. So you just want to be sure that you are not over tightening. You should not have a headache when you finish retwisting your hair. If you do, it's too tight. Again, watch the tension on your roots. Now, what you see here is this is a style where it is I did not retwist. At any point for me, my hair has probably about this much unlocked hair at the root. So what I like about that is it lets me make versatile styles, kind of like what you see here, where you only really see one main part in here, and it almost looks like I don't even have locks at the root, but they are locks. It's just that it's not retwisted. And that part about, I guess this is almost 4 inches, 3-4 inches of hair is not locked. So I'm able to style it kind of how I want to. The downside to that, and that you have to think about, is that the longer your hair gets, the more stress on the roots. And you need to have, if your hair is twisted, then that twisted rope, if you will, is stronger than just your individual strands trying to hold on to, to the lock. Once it gets long, you wouldn't think that it's heavy, but it is very heavy. My hair is very heavy, especially if it's wet. So you have to be careful about that. The other thing is about edges. I always say that when you slaying your edges constantly will literally slay your edges, meaning it will kill your edges. And think about that. There may be times you want to balance it, times when you want a really sleek look, maybe for some pictures or something. Okay, that's fine. But doing it every day, you're going to pay a price for that. And believe me, you can wear your hair. Natural hair is going to have some frizz to it. Natural hair kinky curly hair is going to have some frizz to it. It's going to be kinky curly. The idea that it needs to be flat, it needs to look straight, it needs to lay flat, I think is part of the psychological issue that many of us have with how we think we should be styling our hair in the first place. And it is something that damages our hair and ultimately causes us to lose our edges and things like that. And you don't want to lose your edges. You want your hair to, be healthy for years to come. And, in some cases, you may not be able to help that if there are hormonal issues that are leading to hair loss, or if there are, sometimes just as you get older, which might be related to hormones, you might have some slight receding of your hairline. But you want to do what you can to maintain your health of the hair and certainly not damage it. So I would say really, really rethink some of these styles if you're feeling like you need to be slicking your edges. Also, edge control and edge hold I find to be dangerous. The reason is because when you slick that hair down and it's in that state and it almost freezes slicked down And then I'm sure you guys have seen the videos on YouTube and on, I've seen ads on Facebook where, you know, they'll slick it down and then somebody rubs their finger to show you that it will not move. Well, if it's not moving and it's putting that tension on your hair, you're just asking for like problems of like traction, alopecia and stuff like that. So that's just a word to the wise. I'm not telling you what to do with your hair. I know there are certain looks that people like that they want to have, but just think about these are the possible consequences of some of those looks. And finally, I would say, along with the not over manipulating your hair, my number one secret to growing long locks is to just leave it alone and let it grow. You know, there are many styles that you can have where you don't have to over manipulate your hair and do stuff. You can wear buns, you can wear ponytails, you can, you know, wear it down. There's so many things you can do. You can wear headbands, scarves, and things like that. If you're concerned about the way the edges of the hair look, you know, just leave it alone and let it grow and it will. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them in the comments. If there are any videos you'd like to see in the future, I'm happy to answer those too. And thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Give us a thumbs up on this video if you will, and I look forward to talking to you soon about hair again.